Hey everyone, brand new episode of the David Seaman Hour. This will be one of those monologue episodes where it's just me talking for a little while. The campaign site has been redesigned a bit. If you go to davidseamanforcongress.com, our designer Steven set up this great countdown to try to get people to contribute $100,000 by the spring. And it's interesting the amount of opposition I got to the last podcast I did, where I was just completely honest with you guys and told you that the campaign is not going as well as it should, and that we're not raising enough money to really be competitive. That those are just honest facts, and people said, well, you should do it yourself. You shouldn't rely on the internet. That's what one guy said. And I don't really agree with that. This is something that cannot be done. One person cannot push themselves into Congress. It requires a huge support base, and it requires a lot of money. Otherwise, it's just not doable, especially not in a district like this where I'll be running against a woman who is objectively an awful person, very strong supporter of NDAA, including the imprisonment without trial provisions, the strongest Democratic supporter of SOPA, which if it had been signed into law and passed would have been a disastrous internet censorship regime that would have really destroyed online free speech both in the U.S. and possibly around the world, since so much traffic flows through U.S. servers. So this is obviously not somebody I like, but people in this district, they love her because they only see what the mainstream media says about her. And this is a very Democratic, capital D, very Democratic district. And, they have that machine in place, and she'll be elected for the rest of her life. And that's what it comes down to unless we raise millions of dollars online. And it seems like at this point we can't even raise $100,000. We're nowhere close to raising what we need to raise in order to remain competitive. And those are just the facts. I'm not trying to, insult the internet's ability to raise funds. But when somebody says to me, you have to do this yourself, don't rely on the internet, I don't agree with that. The internet could crush this woman in a heartbeat if it wanted to. And apparently people online don't care as much about stuff like SOPA and NDAA as they claim to. People would rather spend all day in the YouTube comments section talking about this stuff or tweeting people about it, but when it comes time to take $20 out of your wallet and contribute, not just contribute to me, but you could contribute this money to the ACLU or to the EFF or any of the organizations that are fighting for our rights. And when it comes time to do that sort of stuff, the vast majority of people do not contribute any time or money. They really don't. They just want to complain and not do anything. And that's the reality. I'm seeing that that's the reality. That's not pessimism. It's just these are the facts. These are the numbers on the ground. And people don't give a shit. That's what it comes down to. I recently launched, along with my business partner, recently launched a new business. And it's something I'm really excited about. But it was funny, the response from some people. I'm going to try to find it right now. And this is one of the problems with being kind of well-known online, is that you deal with bullshit all day long. And then, as Matt Stagg said on the previous podcast, it's not like internet notoriety changes your real life at all. You walk into Starbucks and most of the time nobody knows who the fuck you are. And it doesn't affect your everyday life. It just affects your online experience. It's a weird kind of dichotomy between being treated different online and having people think that, they have the right to constantly criticize you because you're, kind of well known, versus real life where nobody cares who you are, nobody recognizes you. And you're only well known within this small little subset of people who care about things that I care about. So I posted a video talking about our new business, and somebody commented. The title of the video was "How to Shave Without Losing Money." That was the title. And somebody commented, "Should we take this as Freudian, David? A subconscious wish to be more smooth, like the pros?" It's an interesting choice. Nothing wrong with trying to make an honest buck, but in the larger scheme of things, I don't think you can be an activist and a salesman simultaneously. One will be an act. Is your activism an act? I think this guy's been watching too many episodes of that show on HBO. What is it called? The Psychiatrist? Let's see. HBO shows. Why can I not remember what this is called? Here we go, HBO original series. Where are you? No, not True Blood. Here we go. In Treatment. That's the show I'm thinking of. Uh, is this guy like an armchair psychiatrist? He's seeing Freudian influence, a Freudian slip in a YouTube video that I posted on my page. Come on, dude. You don't know shit about me. And I was not always an activist. I'm not even an activist now. My background is as a tech entrepreneur and an online journalist or online commentator, whatever you want to call me. I'm a guy who tries to find ways to make money off the internet and provide value for customers. That's what I've been doing for years. And really the advocacy, I wouldn't call it activism, I would call it advocacy and spreading information. That really only started after a really bad run-in with the TSA, where they grabbed my testicles for no apparent reason. And then shortly after that, I learned about the NDAA and started covering it, and it became something of a fascination to me that the government literally signed into law something that allows them to imprison Americans without a trial. And it seemed like there was kind of a media blackout and that most politicians were not talking about it. And the NDAA, along with things like drone strikes and warrantless spying on American citizens, have been several topics that both the Republican leadership and the Democratic Party leadership will not touch. Neither of them will touch it. They won't talk about it. It's as if it doesn't exist. It's the fucking 900-pound elephant in the room that nobody wants to address. You know, that we're spending our taxpayer money on some pretty scary stuff. And I think on Abby Martin's Twitter feed, she tweeted out a link to a story on CNET that they've filed a patent. This company has filed a patent for handcuffs that remotely shock. You just using a remote can send shocks to the person who's handcuffed and also automatically inject them with sedatives and other psychoactive chemicals and tranquilizers. So think about that. They've already filed the patent for this fucking thing, and it's going to be a pair of handcuffs that can inject you with drugs and turn you into, just a sedated zombie, or shock you repeatedly. And people out there who go, oh, they just filed the patent. They're not actually going to use this technology. No police departments will buy this. They said the same exact thing about stun guns, about tasers. And now, tasers are widely used by police departments. Tear gas guns are widely used. So when they develop a technology like this, it's not because they don't plan on selling it to police departments. It's because they do plan on selling it and they think there's a market for it. So when I talk about shit like the police state, it's not just, idle talk. These are things that are really happening. And even if you don't care about your constitutional rights or your rights as a fucking human being, you should care about the massive amount of money that's being wasted on this stuff. It's not really creating more jobs. Sure, when you hire cops or when you hire people to develop a handcuff that can sedate you or shock you, that hires some people. But not nearly as many people as would be hired by a stronger tech economy. Or, you look at something like NASA, which is a strong economic multiplier, provides good jobs to smart people, and all of these innovations come out of it. All these technologies are developed, sometimes accidentally, just through the course of research, and then it trickles down into the private sector, and they become things that are now part of our household, things like Velcro. And I don't know if Velcro is actually an example of something NASA developed, but I'm just giving you an idea of everyday used items. You can actually Google that, just like discoveries that NASA has developed that you use in your house. It's a pretty amazing list of stuff. But point is, the taxpayer money that goes toward NASA, it does have an economic multiplier effect. And, they have to hire contractors and specialists to build satellites and to work on Mars rovers and all of this stuff. And it moves us forward as a society and improves our technology versus hiring a bunch of cops to fucking handcuff people with these automated handcuffs, which I think will probably come into the market within the next couple of years. That doesn't really improve the economy. It gives those particular people a job, an incredibly depressing, stressful job, and that's it. Same thing with the TSA. It's just a big jobs program. It gives people a job where they sit next to a scanner all day pushing a button, and occasionally they yell at somebody or, grab somebody's testicles. But it's not actually improving the economy. You're just doling out money, and these are shitty jobs that people don't like, and they don't make the world a better place. Uh, so that's why I got interested in this stuff, is because it seemed like it was having an actual effect on my own life. I couldn't even go on business trips anymore without being harassed by a member of the government, a TSA agent bothering me and grabbing me. And it's like, why is this shit happening with my own money, my own taxpayer dollars? I'm an American citizen. Why is this allowed? And then when NDAA came along, I was not so much surprised by that as I was by the total lack of interest from mainstream media organizations and big-name politicians and a lot of members of the public. And that's part of the reason why I decided to run for Congress. Was I was like, if nobody else is going to talk about this stuff, I will, and hopefully other people will have my back. And it seems like other people don't have my back. Certainly the money has dried up. It's not coming in. These are just things that people don't really care about because they don't think that it affects them. That's what it comes down to. They know that things like NDAA and drone strikes and the government reading all of our emails without a warrant, storing them in a server somewhere in Utah, they know these are bad developments. They don't think these are good things. But they just don't think that it actually affects them. And they don't realize that you're included in this too. The next time you try to fly somewhere to visit family or friends, you could be pulled aside and you could be groped for no reason at all. And your taxpayer dollars are paying for that bullshit. And the next time you send an email that is intimate in nature to a girlfriend or a wife or anything like that, or a fucking mistress if you happen to be the director of the CIA, there could be members of the government reading that email and poring over it and going back for years through all of your other emails. And if you present some kind of a threat to the establishment in the future, they could just pull all these emails out and embarrass you in a way big enough that you have to resign from whatever your job is. And that's the reality of it. That's the reality of a surveillance state, is that it can affect you if you ever become a big name or an influential business person or anything like that. And if you don't, then yeah, it probably won't affect you. The government doesn't really care about what you rented on Netflix last week. They don't. It's true. If you're just the average, ordinary person, this stuff just does not affect you all that much. The NDAA, you're probably not going to be in prison without a trial unless you piss off a lot of the wrong people. But the point is, who wants to live in a society like that, a society where members of the government can just decide they want to imprison somebody? Totally unconstitutional, totally not our system. So that's why I started talking about this stuff. But I am not a fucking activist. I am not an occupier. I'm not anything, really. Like I said, I'm just a small-time tech entrepreneur and became interested in these things because it had gotten to the point where it was directly affecting my life, and I wanted to speak out against it. And I feel like more people will do that in the coming years, hopefully. More people will talk about these things, and maybe we'll have a national discussion at some point about whether we should be spending $60 billion on the TSA, something that doesn't really create jobs outside of the jobs it's actually immediately creating, and something that makes the world a worse place and makes the United States a nightmare for tourists and foreign investors, and makes it difficult for us, American citizens, to even travel to another state to visit our family or our friends or to go to a business meeting. That's something we need to discuss. And but to go back to who I am, I'm just a guy who makes money off the internet and tries to create value. And that goes back to this thing, Shave Boss, which is, I'll just play the little video. It's like a 30-second long video. Let's see. Where are you?
Shave Boss is this monthly delivery service. It's kind of like Netflix, but for razor blades. You pay them a few dollars a month, and then they ship you new disposable razor blades on a regular basis. The blades are really sharp and seem to be high quality. If you're on a budget, it definitely beats paying $12 for a 3-pack of Gillette razor blades at CVS. Anyway, you should check it out. If you're interested, it's on shaveboss.com.
Yeah, that's the whole idea. It's just like she said, it's like a Netflix for razor blades. People spend too much on razor blades. The research we did shows that the average young professional male, somebody like me, is spending at least $424 a year on disposable razor blades. That's ridiculous. You can buy a week-long cruise for that amount. You can just about buy a laptop for that much money. If you want to buy like a low-end Dell or HP, you can get one for around $400. So why are you spending $424 a year on disposable razor blades? This was a problem that we identified, and we felt like with smart business practices we could drive down the price through a number of different mechanisms. One of them is by buying massive quantities of razor blades that drives down the price for us, and then we pass on most of the savings to our subscribers who pay a few bucks a month and get these blades shipped to them every month. And they're high quality blades. As you guys know, I don't associate myself with stuff that is shit because I'm not in it to make a quick buck. Part of the reason why some of my tech stuff has been successful is that people sort of know me online, and they know that I'm a person who likes to be associated with good things, with things that make the world either a better place or an easier place or a more convenient place. And in the case of Shave Boss, it's not something that's going to protect your civil rights. It's not a big deal, but it's something that will save you money and it's convenient. And I'm involved with it because I was genuinely frustrated that I have to spend so much money on razor blades. For some reason, my facial hair is like sandpaper. They say that you're supposed to use a hot towel to open the pores and like soften your hair before you shave. And that doesn't even work for me. I have to do that and then take a hot shower, scalding hot shower, and get hot water on my face for a few minutes. And if I don't do that, then there's no hope of even shaving because the hair is just too strong, too rigid. And it's really weird because nowhere else on my body is there like that ultra masculine hair, just on my face. And so along with my business partner, we came up with this idea of how to drive down the cost of really high quality triple blade disposable razor blades, and Shave Boss was the end result of that. And I want everybody to sign up for it because it's only a few dollars a month. Certainly we're not making a lot of money off of it on the individual basis. We only make money if it ends up being hundreds of thousands of customers. Then we'll start to see good profits. But the idea is just to provide a quality service, and it does make some money for us, and it makes life easier. I'm all for using technology to stick it to outdated business models, and I believe that the business model that Gillette and Schick use are outdated. They spend a lot of money on marketing, and then to subsidize that marketing, they have to charge you more for their blades than they otherwise would. So when you spend $11.79 at the drugstore for a 3-pack of Gillette disposables, are you getting a razor blade that's worth $12? And the answer to that question is not really. It's a good shave, but the blades we ship are a great shave as well and cost a fraction of the cost because we're not spending money on billboards and team sponsorships and all this bullshit. We're just spending money on the product and spending a bit of money on shipping and customer service. We have 24/7 customer support by toll-free phone and by email, which I think makes us stand out from some of the other online razor blade services out there. But I've already talked about this for too long. Just want to use this to say again, there's something interesting I read just earlier today, if I can find it. All these tabs open. Okay. This has to do with Shave Boss, but I'm just mentioning it because it's an interesting psychology study. Women prefer clean-shaven men. Turns out women really do care about facial hair, and this is an article on the Canadian version of Ask Men, and it cites a study from the journal Behavioral Ecology, which queried women from New Zealand and Canada. This is a quote, by the way, from the article. The study queried women from New Zealand and Canada to determine their preferences on men's facial hair. Those women responded that bearded men looked older and more aggressive. Over 200 women were presented with pictures of clean-shaven and bearded men making different types of faces. The results showed that women found the clean-shaven men significantly more attractive. Interestingly enough, a group of men were also shown the same pictures, and they perceived the men with beards as having more social status. That's really interesting for a couple of reasons. One is that I've noticed that when I I don't want to say evaluate, but when I meet another dude, if he has kind of a good, strong beard, I feel like that guy, I don't know if I consciously realize that, but I feel like that guy has higher status, kind of like the most interesting man in the world, the Dos Equis man. If you have a strong gray beard, it makes you look like a badass. It really does. Or even if you have a really solid 5 o'clock shadow, it kind of shows people that you're in a position where you don't need to be constantly clean-shaven, where if you go off the rails for a few days, it doesn't matter to you because you've reached that level where nobody can send you home from the office for having some stubble on your face. I think that's what it shows, and there is something probably there's probably some evolutionary psychology going on there. Kind of an alpha male deference thing where you see somebody who has a strong beard and you automatically associate them with some primal leadership type stuff. But I've noticed that. And what's interesting is that women do not see it the same way. So I might respect a guy who has a beard, but according to this study, women find guys with beards to be more quote-unquote aggressive, which, I'm not denying the fact that some women like facial hair, but I think that the numbers show that if you want to play the numbers, more women prefer clean-shaven to not clean-shaven, which is certainly good for a business model like Shave Boss, because we can play that up, and let people know that you're more attractive to the opposite sex when you're shaven. And it's amazing how many of our choices have nothing to do with us as individuals and have almost everything to do with evolutionary psychology, with what's just ingrained in our brain from thousands of years ago. And I don't find that stuff depressing or dehumanizing. I find it actually really fascinating. So stuff like Sex at Dawn, which has made the rounds on all of these podcasts in terms of people talking about it, I find a book like that fascinating because it's just the truth. It's just biology and reality. There's no ideology superimposed. We're a species, and we have certain predispositions that have come about over thousands and hundreds of thousands of years of our development. That's the way it goes. To go back to politics for a second, I think part of the reason why we have a Congress that is filled with these dumbasses who believe the Earth is, 6,000 years old and they're against stem cell research and all of this kind of regressive shit, part of the reason why that's the case is I think that anybody who's a normal person, normal, well-adjusted person, gets weeded out of the process. I mean, with our congressional run with my race, I can't even deal with it anymore, of the constant criticism. Everything I do or say is picked apart and get called a piece of shit, and people are just vicious. And I think after that process, that disgusting process, and we're not even talking about the attack ads that will inevitably come out if I start to do well in the polls. The only reason nobody's paying attention to me right now is that we don't have all that much support. I think that process of constant criticism and attacks weeds out anybody who is normal and psychologically well-adjusted, because that's not a normal experience. To be constantly attacked is not normal, and if you're a normal person, you just want to eventually avoid that and go about living your life. That's what you want to do. You don't want to be constantly attacked and have to constantly mount some kind of defense. And so the only people who are left by the end of this gauntlet are the crazies who go, I don't care what you think because I believe in Jesus, and I know the world is 6,000 years old, and I know stem cell research is wrong, and I know that gays are doing their gay stuff by choice, not because it's their biology or their genes. That's what it comes down to, is when you constantly criticize people who are trying to do a good thing and run for office, which is really kind of a personal sacrifice. People say, oh, you get paid $176,000 a year while you're in Congress. That's not why I'm fucking running. I much prefer to stay in the private sector where I can make plenty of money from my websites. And, if people think that I'm running for Congress to get a paycheck, you're absolutely fucking insane, and you don't know anything about me. But the people who are left by the end of this process are the crazies who don't care what anybody else thinks of them because they have the Bible on their side, and that's it. And because, again, normal people respond to feedback, and normal people don't like constant negative feedback. If they get constant negative feedback and constant harassment, they go, maybe I should do something different. Maybe I should not be in harm's way anymore and deal with this shit. Life's too short. Why should I deal with this? Why should I deal with people harassing me because I say that the TSA is a waste of taxpayer money? Why should I deal with any of this stuff? People criticizing me for criticizing drones. It's like, fuck you, dude. Why don't you read about this stuff before you come and attack my views on us using robots to kill people without judicial review? But that's the way it goes. This is the world we live in. It's not an ideal world, but it is, in many ways, an exciting place to be. It's a hell of a lot better than it was 20 years ago or 100 years ago. And this is something that I debate with people all the time. They talk about how can you how can you talk positively about something like the stock market, for example? And my answer to that is because it's fucking amazing compared to where it was 100 years ago. 100 years ago, it was a closed club, and you could only be a part of it basically if you were some douchebag with a top hat and a monocle on and millions of dollars. Then you could buy and sell stocks. But if you were just the average guy on the street, a newspaper boy or a railroad worker, you couldn't really break into something like that and invest money in meaningful ways. But today, with the advent of all kinds of online trading platforms and really the internet has democratized finance to a large degree, where you can be somebody who only has a couple $1,000s and you can still participate in this global marketplace of stocks and bonds and whatever else. So I think that's fascinating. Do I think it's perfect or free from corruption or anything like that? No, and I haven't said that. But I think it's amazing that technology has opened up and to a certain extent leveled the playing field for everybody. And I'm not just talking about stock markets. I'm talking about businesses. 100 years ago, would I be able to set up a site that allows us to take orders from all over the country, from all 50 states? And along with my business partner, would we be able to drive down the price of shaving for men all across the country? Of course not. That would cost a prohibitive amount of money to do, and it would have to be done via a mail order catalog, and it would just be so expensive and so burdensome that it would not really make sense to do that. But today, new businesses are created constantly and new ideas. You look at the iPhone, it's only been around since 2007. People act like the iPhone has been around forever. But it's still a new thing. 2007, so that's about 5 years, almost 6 years now. And it's changed the way people consume information and the way people produce information also. If you have a Twitter account on your phone, you're always out there. You're potentially a citizen journalist 24/7. If some shit happens right around you, you take a photo of it and send it to your friends, and then it can propagate on Twitter, and millions of people can see it. Even if the mainstream media chooses to ignore it, millions of people can still see it thanks to the power of social media. And I've been cursing a lot on this podcast, but I saw online the other day there was some study that came out that people who curse tend to be more honest and what was the other thing? More honest and trustworthy than people who do not curse. And I fucking agree with that. When you see somebody who talks in that politician speak, Joe Rogan has talked about this on his podcast before, of how presidents talk like Obama does. Now let me be clear. We need to increase our drone production, send more drones to Pakistan, send more troops to Afghanistan. When you listen to somebody who talks in that politician speak, they're no longer connecting with you on an individual, normal basis. And similarly, when you come across somebody in business or in your personal life who never curses and never drinks and does not believe in premarital sex and has never had sex aside from their wife, they've never had sex before that, I mean, this is a person who is not normal, and I'm not trying to judge other people's lifestyles or other people's belief systems, but this is a person who does not represent you and certainly does not represent the majority of young Americans. This is a person who, they might not be an asshole, but they're somebody who's disconnected with their own desires and their own urges and their own humanity. And I find that those are the people you have to watch out for. It's the phonies who deny their own sexual urges and their own human avarice. These are the people you have to watch out for. We're all kind of the same at the end of the day. We all want to get laid. We all want to make money. We all want to be respected. We all want to do something meaningful while we're here on this planet. And the people who claim that they don't want those things, you really do have to keep an eye on them because they can be trouble. So that's really the podcast. This is about half the length of a full David Seaman hour because it's just me talking. And I feel like when it's just me, I can get a lot more information out there and talk quickly and not waste any time. Not to say that having guests on is a waste of time by any means, but obviously the episodes where you have a guest, they go for longer because it's not just your views, it's also the other person's views. And when somebody's on this podcast, I really see it as their time. I'm just there to ask the kinds of questions that listeners might be thinking of as they listen to it. But it's not for me to promote myself or talk about myself. It's really an opportunity for them to express their views and for us to hash it out. And there are a couple people I want to get on the podcast soon. One of them is Jason Silva. I emailed him. People had recommended on Twitter, they recommended that he come on the program. and I've emailed him, and hopefully that works out because he seems really fascinating, and he has such a positive, optimistic view on where technology will take society. And I would love to poke some holes in that theory of his because I think that that only happens if we, as individuals and as a society, do the right things. If we don't do the right things, we don't get that utopian technological society. Instead, we get handcuffs that shock people remotely and surveillance drones up in the sky on every street corner. And we get a surveillance society where people are afraid to speak out. And we get the kinds of shit that we have right now. That's what we get. The enlightened technological society only happens if people speak up en masse about things that they don't like and about things that they think are a waste of money. And if we have a political system where you're represented by people who are like you and are not career politicians backed only by lobbying groups and powerful special interests. And that is, unfortunately, not the system that we have right now. And it's not really a structural problem. It's a problem of apathy. And I see this here in my own district. It lets me down. That online, it's so encouraging, and then you talk to people in real life. They haven't heard about any of these issues, and they think that my opponent is a great woman, a great American, strong Democrat. And when you say, well, what about SOPA? What about NDAA? They've barely heard of SOPA because they saw the fucking thing on the homepage of Google a while back. So they sort of know about that, and they go, oh, yeah, that was a bad decision. But they don't realize really the implications of online censorship. They don't think that the United States would ever have censorship. And NDAA, again, even if you explain it to people, they go, yeah, that sucks, but it's never going to affect me. And they don't realize it doesn't matter if it affects you personally. Once it's on the books, it affects the whole society, and it affects our whole way of life, So thank you for listening, and hopefully Jason Silva will come on the program, and a couple of other good guests I'm trying to pursue at this time. So hopefully that will be something you'll hear in the coming days. But again, go over to shaveboss.com, and since I'm invested in that site, some of the money does go to me. So if you want to help the podcast out and you want to help yourself out by getting great razor blades at, I'd say less than a fourth, maybe even a fifth of the price you're paying now, go for it. Go check them out. And that's it. Again, part of the reason why I'm promoting Shave Boss is because we are no longer sponsored by that credit card site. There's nothing wrong with the credit card site. It's still a great business. I'm still involved in it. But enough of you guys have spoken out and said you don't want this podcast sponsored by a company that promotes credit cards. And, I listen to feedback. That's great. That site is never going to be mentioned on this podcast again. There's nothing wrong with it, but I think there's a lot of people out there who don't like the idea of credit, and fine. I disagree with some of their arguments, but I respect feedback from lots of people. When a lot of people say the same thing to you, there's something there. When one person says something, it can be just some troll. But when a bunch of people say, look, you got to stop having your podcast be sponsored by this kind of industry, then I look at it seriously, and I agreed with that. I didn't agree with their reasoning, but I agree with the idea of this show locking down better sponsors, and certainly shipping razor blades to people and allowing people to shave and be more attractive to the opposite sex and get laid more often as an indirect result. That's not something that puts negative energy out into the world. It's not a bad thing, so I'm happy to have that be a part of the show. And I'm now rambling at this point. Thank you for listening, and hopefully I will talk with you guys on Twitter later on today. Feel free to shoot me anything you want me to talk about on the next podcast. I know some of you guys have asked me to talk about chemtrails. I don't really want to do that because I don't think there's anything there. Chemtrails just seem kind of like bullshit. There are so many things the government is actually doing that we should be talking about and fixing. Things like NDAA, things like the amount of money we're wasting on surveillance programs. And why don't we focus on that stuff instead of this paranoid make-believe that the government is spraying people from planes at night with chemicals from the sky? Doesn't make a lot of sense. And a lot of these photos that people have sent to me of chemtrails actually just look like contrails. The trail that a plane leaves behind when it's moving through the air at 500 miles an hour, about 5 or 6 miles above the surface of the Earth, where it is extremely cold and ice forms. So these people don't really seem to be experts on weather patterns or contrails or any of this stuff, and they go, "Oh, it's a chemtrail." Maybe it's not a chemtrail. Maybe it's just a plane flew over your house in the middle of the night. There's something like, I believe, 60,000 people in the sky at any given time over the U.S., which is an amazing statistic, if that's even remotely true. I think it is. But think about that. Right now, as you're listening to this, there's 60,000 people miles above the Earth moving around in airplanes at 500 miles an hour. That's pretty cool. And I think a lot of that airplane traffic is responsible for what people are calling chemtrails. It's not the government spraying you with poisons, it's just airplane traffic. And that's all I've been able to find out about it, so I don't want to focus on it because it seems like bullshit. And if somebody presents me evidence to the contrary, I'm happy to look into it. But for the time being, I don't think it's terribly credible. Thank you for listening.